So I've been thinking about that a lot, especially because I would love for students to be able to do this without being ushered by an Imam and a Rabbi. I would love for students to be able to take the initiative on their own, and I have hopes for this year that it'll happen more, because it's not as immediate. That they'll reach out to each other and just have coffee with each other and hear what it's been like from a student's experience who thinks differently about the conflict and has relatives in different places, but are also impacted by what we can call an escalating war in Israel-Palestine and Israel and the many hostile neighbors around Israel. And I think for us, it really began with our trust and our relationship, and our really understanding where our common ground was and where we thought differently, and respecting them both and making room for that. And I think what's hard about recruiting students for it is they can't necessarily imagine how good it will make them feel to have these conversations, that they're actually not as hard as you think, that they're actually just humans showing up and understanding the diversity in both of our communities, and that once it's hard to give them that knowledge before they're in the room. So I think in our case it was finding a few students who really championed it and were able to talk to their peers and get their peers to come and say, yeah, it might not be comfortable, it definitely won't be, and this is going to be really valuable. And there's 4 sessions. If you hate it, it'll be over in a month. And no one hated it. Even some couple students who we thought hated it at the time and were probably pushed further out of their comfort zone than even felt healthy for them in the moment. By the end, we did alumni gatherings afterwards, and by the end of the semester, they were the most grateful for it. So it was moving.
Yeah, one of assumptions usually when you are inviting people to engage in dialogue is that doing some kind of interfaith dialogue is probably not doing justice to the issue, that you're not being vocal enough, that you're not doing justice to how difficult that is. And my response to that is, this is actually opportunity to come to your disagreements, because there is no other way around. So before you do that, you can have assumptions of what's happening or about those who have different worldviews, but coming to the table and getting to know those who have different worldview and engaging with them, how it impacts them and their lives, and then why they have perception about the conflict the way they have, is actually opportunity to broaden your perspective and probably to make more impact together. Because even if there are so many disagreements, there are also common themes that different communities can use to actually make impact and positive change in local communities, but also in broader communities. Also, another important reminder is that it's not religious conflict. Yeah. Right? So even if this is Jewish-Muslim Dialogue Fellowship, it was planned before October 7th, conflict impacts other communities as well, including Christian community. So it's not just affecting these 2 communities, and it's not religious, but somehow sometimes these 2 communities are called out to take some kind of responsibility or to apologize or to advocate. And we had students actually in our
express resentment
cohort who said, I don't want that burden because I cannot take it. So it was important for them to provide, to learn about tools, how they can actually talk about conflict, how they can process themselves, but also not feel responsible for it, not feel responsible to apologize for somebody's actions if they don't have any control over it.
As no one in this country really does. I do want to emphasize that as well. Like Amir and I are not experts in Israel-Palestine. We brought in experts who had deep understanding of the history of anti-Semitism and history of Islamophobia, and they did a session and kind of prepared us for our fourth session, which was getting into the way the students feel triggered around the conflict, and with a lot of active listening exercises. And I'm just excited that now that they have this trust and they like being together to build on it, because we're planning a 2.0 for the fall with the same students at the same time as running a new cohort to both deepen and broaden the impact. I am feeling both apprehensive and a little scared, and also really optimistic about the work we're doing, because I think when we create these third spaces and give students an opportunity to not feel like they have to retract into themselves, but actually how much more, once they experience how much better it feels to actually do the opposite and to feel safety in it, I just think it's like we've changed that person's life. And so I'm really looking forward to the specific work we're doing. I'm also grateful for the Leadership Summit, because this morning, having this time with Imam Durić this weekend, and I don't know if you'll like me saying this publicly, but we agreed that we want to do an October 7th commemoration that is inclusive of both of our student groups and that addresses the deep mourning that students feel in both communities, and especially given the real devastation and scale of death and hunger and chaos of being a refugee in Gaza. It's at a scale that is so alarming to both of us. And so I think creating space for students to grieve together, and even if it's what's it called when kids play by themselves but together, even if it's grief that is side by side, but to create a shared space where we can hold grief for all the suffering that's happened this past year. And I think that matters a lot, because I think if we can support each other in our tears, we can also, our tradition says those who sow in tears reap in joy, and then I think we can do more of the positive work going forward.
Yeah, going back to campus this academic year will be certainly challenging, because many individuals, families, communities are being affected in various ways. And for us, it is important to acknowledge that, especially as chaplains, to meet each one of our students, faculty and staff members where they are, but also to help them get where they should be. And we will try our best to model that and to invite members of our communities to take part in that modeling, but also in that pathway towards hopefully restoration, but also finding appropriate ways to grieve, but also to build together. As one of our speakers during the dialogue fellowship said, it's not easy to be bridge builder, because people walk over bridges.
Right.
Bridges are walked on. So we are aware of that. And sometimes
we've both been walked on, I think.
Yeah, and then sometimes we're intentionally vulnerable, but we do try to remind ourselves why this work is important, and that it's necessary. So we will see what are best ways, and taking something from the summit here as well, and our colleagues as well, best practices, but also building on what we already established, and being proactive as much as we can to provide spaces that are needed and programming that is needed for members of our communities to feel who they are, to make their roots stronger, but also to hopefully get to their well-being.